about the 2021 M+R Benchmarks report. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Livieri. I'm a nonprofit business coach, #1 international best-selling author, former executive director, toilet scrubber, program developer, and now I love helping nonprofits change the way they operate so they can make a bigger impact. Now, one of the things that can really help us in thinking about how to make a bigger impact and how we can run our organizations better is looking at data. But not all data is created equal, and it's really important to consider data in its context. So one of the tools we have at our disposal is the M+R Benchmarks report, which is all about benchmarking digital fundraising related data from the nonprofit industry. Now, there are other folks who do this as well. And so here are some top tips I want you to keep in mind as we go through the report. And if you want to ask questions about the report, the link is in the chat. You can open it up yourself and feel free to ask me a question as we go through or at the end. But just pulling up my notes here, the M+R Benchmarks report is really well promoted and really nicely displayed, and I think there are a lot of good takeaways, but I want you to keep in mind that their sample set is really small. In fact, they're US and UK, and this year's sample set is about 220 nonprofits. Now, in the US alone, there are over 1 million nonprofits, and just for comparison, AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, does quarterly fundraising reports. Their sample size is around 2,500. So more than 10 times as big. So just want you to keep that kind of in mind that, consider this data with a grain of salt, if you will, because the sample set is so small. But that's not to say that there isn't value to get from it. So another thing I want to say before we kind of jump into the details of this report is that for every time I look at a report, I'm really thinking about a few things, because the basic, especially if we're talking about anything that has to do with fundraising, donor engagement, or really any kind of marketing or trying to get people engaged in any way, there's a basic formula that I follow. It's that the level of engagement is the product of two factors: how well you can use the laws of basic human psychology or the realities of human psychology times the level at which your communication is in the right context. So is it in the right place? Is the messaging relevant? So those are the key things. So see, we have a bunch of people kind of joining us. Follow along with the M+R Benchmarks report if you'd like. But otherwise, let's dive in and keep those things in mind as we look through this report. So, and keeping those things in mind, there's kind of 3 questions you could be asking yourself, right? Because in that equation of human psychology times the context, guess what? The human psychology part stays constant, basically, right? Our minds aren't changing drastically, although I think we had a bit of the context changing for sure, a lot of context changing in 2020. So what I'm going to be asking myself as I read through this report, and I did already read through it, is why is it working, right? If they're showing something's working, I want to understand why. Is it because something new happened, right? That's out of your control? Is it because something changed about you, your organization, or your industry? Or is it something that changed from the perspective of the donor, right? So those are 3 things we can ask ourselves. And let me share my screen so you can see this data coming through as well. And if you want to ask a question, pop it in the chat for me, not the Q&A, because I can monitor that more easily while we go. So remember I said, right, this is a small sample set, and here are the participants divided up kind of by category. So these are really low numbers here. So do keep that in mind. If you want to know the actual organizations who participated, they are listed over here in the appendix section. They go through quite a bit of editorial. I'll let you read their editorial and I'll focus on giving you mine. So let's look at some of the charts that they've provided. And we'll start by looking at revenue. So let's scroll down So change in online revenue. One thing that they pointed out is overall online revenue, online giving donations was up across the industries by 32%. And that's a lot. But what I want to point out is that online overall revenue, overall giving, according to AFP, was up by 10%, right? So that means some of this increase in online revenue is new donations, and a good chunk of it is just a shift from offline to online. So I want you to think about, so why was there so much of a shift from offline to online? Well, there's some obvious answers for 2020 compared to 2019. That's how this is working. We're looking at 2020 compared to 2019. Well, we were doing so much more stuff online, right? Both your context and your donor's context changed, right? So you're probably doing more, or other nonprofit organizations were doing more online fundraising. And at the same time, your donors were probably getting used to giving more online, right? Some people who previously maybe preferred to just give their check at an event or something were pushed to do it online because they didn't have the opportunity to do it offline. So what does this mean for going forward, right? One is you can continue to push for online revenue, but also keep in mind that, some of this may go back as you start doing in-person events, but your audience now probably has been trained, right? Their context has changed. All of a sudden, for people whose online giving was maybe scary or uncomfortable because it was new or different or not what they're used to, we've had a big shift in doing a lot of things online this past year, and that's something that will stay even as the pandemic goes. So you can absolutely take advantage of that going forward. So that's the online revenue. So these are all different charts in here that you can flip through. You can also review them by going through the editorial. So I'm just gonna highlight a few of them and talk about them. So another change, a big change that was highlighted at the editorial was that online revenue for hunger and poverty organizations was up by 173%. That's really high, right? That's this line right here. So this is the average for all of them. And now, of course, we probably know why, right? So why is because of COVID, I'm guessing. But let's talk about what that means. Okay, so we were just talking about hunger, poverty, right, is up by 173%. That's a huge jump. And I want to talk about that. Does anybody here have an organization that deals with hunger and poverty? Let me know in the chat. Give me a yes in the chat now if your organization is a hunger or poverty organization. So this is for you, right? So you might go, oh man, well that was COVID and things aren't going to be the same next year. But why? Hunger itself, poverty itself as a form of suffering, as a significant issue and something that impacts people seriously, that didn't actually get worse. But what did change is that we had more people experiencing hunger and poverty because we had a lot of people losing their jobs. And so I think that's one reason why, but why did people tune in? Because it's more. And I'm not convinced that it was because it was more people that people stepped up to donate in this area. My theory is that there are two potential reasons. One is that because of COVID, there's this problem with giving to the poor and hungry is because there's often this blaming the victim thing that goes on. Well, it's kind of their fault that they're poor. And I think that because we were able to say, oh, COVID is the reason, it really removed that barrier for a lot of people. So in that case, that's something that might go away. And if you're a hunger or poverty organization, having that go away might reduce your giving again. But I would think about educating your audience and reminding them, right? Once you've captured those donors this year, continue to educate them and let them know that hunger and poverty are usually not the fault of the people who are experiencing them directly. Another thing I think that may have affected this was that we're in it together mentality, right? That whenever there's a natural disaster or emergency, people tend to come together and feel like they need to chip in. In some way, that's a psychological benefit to them, right? If they feel helpless otherwise, they feel that supporting an organization can make them feel helpful. And that's something that you could be leveraging anytime, even if there's not a national disaster. You can be espousing the benefits, the psychological benefits to your donors, right? They're getting an emotionally fulfilling experience by fulfilling their missions through your work. So I think that's relevant to think about there. Otherwise, one thing to note here, change in online revenue for non-COVID response organizations. Their monthly revenue grew alongside with their one-time revenue. Let's see if I can pull the monthly giving. So just so you know here, so here's change in online revenue type if you want to know. So here's monthly versus one time. So you can see monthly grew by 25%, 37% increase in one-time giving. And to me, this says, it just hammers home what we know, what if you listen to a fundraising donation specialist, they will tell you is that you really want to increase your monthly giving. Really pay attention to that. So you can see that was up, and guess what? Which thing is going to stick around next year? Is that increased? Is that 202% here, change in online revenue? It's interesting that that's a little different. Is that one-time giving always going to be here for you? Probably not. I think people got a boost because of COVID. But that monthly giving increase, that has the potential to stay. So now's the time to really nurture those donors and keep that going, I think. Here's just an interesting chart I want to make sure you're aware of. This one is only in this charts section of the M+R benchmarks, but this just shows you online revenue change since 2016, right? So whenever we're just talking about online revenue change, it doesn't mean that these are new donations. Many of these could be a shift from offline to online. But you can see that the change from to 2020, it's going to be a little bigger each year, that this was a big difference since 2016. Otherwise, it's been a steady rise pretty much year over year, except in public media. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, great. So let's talk about what's my next graph? I'm going to refer to my notes here for a second. I wanted to talk about return on ad spend here. So let's go to, we're moving over to digital ads, and the return on ad spend. Okay, digital advertising cost per donation and return on ad spend here. These are the ones we're going to look at. Right, so yes, nonprofits can advertise for fundraising. And here you can see we've got display ads. Those are like billboards and things. Search ads, so that would be an ad like when you search in Google or Bing and the ad shows up. Social media would be an ad on Facebook or Instagram often, and then video ads. So think like YouTube. You can see that search ads were high. They performed very well here. If we look over to return on ad spend. So search is $4. So for every dollar someone spent on a search ad for a donation, they got back $4.78 in return, right? So that's a good return. The other ads didn't perform so well. So for every dollar spent on display ads, organizations got 38 cents back. Now you might go, why would you ever do that? But right, often if you're running an ad, you might be picking up what I'd call a cold donor, someone who's never really given before, right? So you get them knowing that your nonprofit exists. So you made 38 cents, but now you're going to try to nurture them into a full-on supporter. But here's the thing with search ads, right? Mostly what we're talking about here is someone searching something like, don't make a donation to, and then your organization's name or your organization's type. So make a donation to, hunger relief in my county. That might be a search term. So there's going to be a limited number of people searching that specifically, and note that they are searching specifically. So two things here. One is you're not going to invest all your money in these search related ads because it's going to have an upper limit based on the number of people searching for that thing. Otherwise, kind of a no-brainer here when you break it down. Why did these search related ads perform so well? It's because the people were literally searching for how to donate to basically your organization. So at that point, all you have to appear, they've already decided to donate. They've already decided that's the cause they care about. And all you need to do is appear in front of them. So of course, those ads are going to perform very well in that regard. Okay, we are running out of time. I think I have one more takeaway for you, which has to do with websites. So let's just move over to the website engagement section here. And after that, I'll take questions. If you want to pull up the M+R Benchmarks report, for those of you who are here live and ask me a question about it, that's totally fine. So one thing to note was users on desktop devices made up the majority of donation transactions and revenue. And you can see that here. Let me just zoom this in my way. Users on desk right here. So you might go, wow, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but the number of mobile users has been going up, 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 up. That's a product of mobile devices increasing in popularity, and they're more, they're just with us all the time, and there's an emphasis on getting people to use their mobile devices. So, but why is this happening? And one thing that I want to point out here is they talk about users on desktop devices. And if you read the editorial, they're going to say desktop users. And you might be tempted to think these are people who primarily use a desktop over a mobile device. But this data doesn't actually tell us that necessarily. All we know is that when people are on their desktops, they're more likely to complete that donation and give a larger gift. What this tells me, just kind of breaking it down in my head, is, have you ever thought about buying something on your phone and said, before I make this kind of what's a big decision to me, let me sit down and address it more specifically, like when I'm doing my bookkeeping or thinking about my finances, and that you're going to look for that email and log back on later when you're actually on your computer, even though you made the basic decision to do it on your mobile device. And I think this is especially common type of behavior for like someone who is older and less comfortable buying things online. So, a senior, which is also a category that gives a lot. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And what it tells me to do is make sure that for whatever messages you're giving on your mobile channels, like social media, Facebook messages, posts, that you're reinforcing that with emails, and that you are reminding people frequently so they don't have to go digging through their Facebook or their email account to find the information they need to finally make that donation. So I think that is really key there. That's all I have time for. I've got a few minutes for questions. If anybody has a specific question, pop it in the chat now. For those of you who are watching the recording, I'd encourage you to reach out to me. You can leave a comment, or you can reach out to me at pivotground.com/apply and schedule a free